Hey everybody, I'm doing something a little bit different today because I have invited my friend Josh Smith to join us on the channel to tackle an important topic, which is how to be successful in college. Now, like me, Josh has opinions on this topic, but unlike me, he actually has expertise as well. So for many years, he has been a faculty member at Loyola University. For about 9 years, he was the dean of the School of Education there, and he has advised many hundreds of students over the course of his career. And one of his specialty areas is actually the transition from high school to college. So hopefully he has some insights for us about how to be successful in college. Hey Josh, what's up?
Not much, Ben. It's been a little while. I'm really excited about this conversation today.
Yes, welcome. I'm really happy to have you here. I want to start with maybe a question that seems simple, but perhaps is more complex, which is, what does it actually mean to be successful in college? And before you answer, I kind of want to tee it up because I imagine myself in college, and I imagine, at the end of the 4 years, hey, they gave me this piece of paper. It's my diploma. I'm in a fancy gown and a hat, and I go through this graduation ceremony. And so I think on the surface, it seems like, well, if I've graduated, if I have my diploma, then I've at least met the bare minimum of success for college. But, what are your thoughts on this kind of question?
Well, that's, geez, you had to start out with a nice, easy softball question, right? I mean, that's big, right? And it's something I think a lot about, and I talk a lot about with the students, because one of the things that I found out after doing this for so long is that it's a residual effect often, that people come back 5 some odd years and remember what the value of what they got. The success is not kind of in the present because it's more transactional, as you said. I got my major, I got my degree, and got a job, I got into graduate school. So those are all markers of success. But what's missing from that definition of success is the present. Like, what's happening to you? How are you kind of optimizing that time that you have on this, mostly these beautiful campuses? And so I really try to slow people down a little bit to make sure that they're taking time to enjoy and soak in the present. And that successes are building wins, little wins here, here, here. And the more of those you can, get or capture, if you will, then you're starting to see that you are successful, like you are improving, like you feel this growth. And I really struggle with some of my colleagues and people who argue with me about that fact where they just have this list of things, check this, check this, check this, check this. Yes, that's successful. But it's really not going to be lasting in your mind. So I guess that's how it started us off today.
Okay. Well, I want to highlight one thing I feel like you touched on, then jumped over a little bit, which was that often we don't like when we're in college, we're kind of laying the groundwork for our future. I mean, really, at any point in time, we're laying a groundwork for our future. But that in some ways you don't experience the effects of what you have, the seeds you have planted, let's say, to be metaphorical, until many years afterwards. Do you have experiences where students have talked to you like after, many years after college, 5, 6 years after college, and talked to you about, what did they feel like? Oh, this was important to me, or I didn't realize how important that was, or wow, I don't know why I spent so much time doing that, and that wasn't that important.
Yes. Yes, and yes, right? I talk to lots of students because I write letters of recommendation for graduate schools, and people, invite me to their weddings and those kind of things, which is really rewarding. Or some faculty, people that I worked with in graduate school are now faculty members, and so I see them at conferences. I mean, to me, obviously, those are professional successes, but what they often talk about is relationships. And they often talk about those kind of moments where they were really sort of questioning, what am I doing here? Like, what was I doing here? And I think those reflections back, there's some regret. Let's just put it that way. I think there was a misdirection and a lot of bad advice about how do you sort of take advantage and get the most out of college. that comes from your high school experiences, maybe from your families, or even from your faculty or your friends at college, etc. And so I do spend a lot of time really trying to, while they're here, dispelling some of those myths and really helping them, get the most out of it. And then those tend to be the ones that I do follow up with afterwards, and they still say, "Hey, I know you." They call me Smitty. Smitty, you told me to do this, and I tried, but I really should have done that. I'm like, I know. I told you not to take 17 credits. You just said you wanted to, and what happened?
So I mean, okay, so that's one example of like, I mean, what do you think some of these kind of bad, either bad advice, or in some cases kind of like you go into college with a certain mentality, and like, can you give some more examples?
Yeah, I think it's really balance. You need to have, and this is true throughout your whole life, I think. I have found that when you experience sort of a balance and this sort of perfect, sort of elevated, excitement, maybe even some might call it a little bit of stress, a little bit of motivation to do it, but not too much. And then you start really caring about not only the people, but the subjects and the things that you're engaged in, then you start to find that balance, and it starts to sort of reward itself. So there's a lot of strategies you can put in place to kind of either rebalance if you're off and you're doing way too much studying, you've taken on way too much, or doing way too much extracurriculars, too many clubs, too many, sort of friends, experiences, etc. And you just got to keep rebalancing that. And I think we don't encourage the reflection and that time to pause and say, hey, where am I out of balance? Because it can't be perfectly balanced. So where am I out of balance? What is my pressure points look like? And where do I feel like I'm spending this optimal time on me as a person in growth, which tends to be on more extracurriculars, co-curriculars. We can talk a little bit about what those specific things are. And on what I would call the academics, how do I actually learn? And I can just point to obviously your work and your videos to people to do better at that. That's not kind of where I live in my research, in my expertise, but I do show your videos to my students because they need work on that too. Mm-hmm. But I'm finding that the other part of this sort of this navigating this complicated space where you have lots of independence and then you have lots of bad models. Mm-hmm. And so you got to figure out, the student has to figure out, where am I sort of finding that flow? And universities and colleges don't do a very good job of explaining some of the easy ways to get around the barriers or the bureaucracy or just the kind of not knowing what the rules are or where to go to seek out some assistance or where to go to get extra. So I'm going to end this with this kind of story that I do. Every time I have a class that has seniors, juniors, and sophomores, and sometimes freshmen mostly, but I had this class that kind of a catch-all in psychology. I always have the seniors do a panel, what I wish I would have known. And it generates so much good information, and it's more powerful, I think, coming from them than coming from me. But they say the same thing every
What's like 3 things that they say?
Yeah. I took too many classes. Multiple semesters to either make up for a withdrawal, or I didn't plan ahead, or and it's literally every time students are taking more than 16 credits or however your university works, it's always a disaster that semester, because that extra hours of the curriculum are stealing from the 15 hours that you should be focusing on, and there's no other trade-off. You just can't do it. So that's one. The second one is that they're very trusting of the systems and not questioning of the systems, particularly around course selection, major selection, minor selection, etc. And what they find out is that they were either decided themselves or pressured to do too much, double major, 2 minors and a ham sandwich, all this extra things that in essence they realized as they're applying for graduate school or getting a job didn't really matter. But it also took away from, again, time to focus on those really, really things that they cared about. So that's the second one. And the third one is always, it's so silly, but they underestimate at the beginning of the semester how much they're going to accomplish. Mm-hmm. right? So they call it time management, but that's too simple of a way to say it, right? They come in hungry every September and every January. Everyone's coming to class. Everyone's excited. It's other two like down the cadence of the semester catches up with them, and I can just see them saying, "Oh my goodness, it's happening again." Not going to class, turning stuff in right at the last moment. It's just they lose this momentum that they keep kind of recreating, and the reason being, and again, I say it's not time management. It's not. They're not balanced. They get off balance right away. They start doing way too many things at the beginning, and they try to. They're always catching up. And
so these are people who are enthusiastic generally at the beginning.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
very enthusiastic
to a person. Yeah, we don't admit people at the college I work at who cannot be successful. And I think that's the case with most of our colleges and universities. And I think the folks who are watching your stuff are going to really good campuses, variety of spaces, good community colleges that offer really solid education. We don't admit people that can't be academically successful. I think, and I say that, that's why my belief would be is that we should never dismiss somebody for academics, because that's the responsibility of the institution as well as the individual, right? That's a little controversial, but that's kind of how I roll. But you can do it. Everybody can do the academic work. But what they can't do often is they can't do it consistently and on the same pace as who their professors are. Remember, if you have 5 professors and you have midterms, those people don't talk to one another. They just do their own thing as if their class is the only thing you have to do. But yet you have 4 other people who think the same, and all of a sudden, October 23rd, you got 2 papers, an exam, and a group project due. That you thought in September, what a great semester. I don't really have that much work to do this semester. This is going to be great. And all of a sudden, the second week of October, you forgot, I haven't started that paper. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I have two questions based on what you just said. One is that, you talk about this concept of balance, and it seems like, one axis of this is academics versus kind of extracurriculars. Are there other dimensions that you think about or consider in terms of balance? And then I'll save my second question to
Okay. Yeah, the harder part to hear from a student perspective as well as from a faculty, because I have responsibilities, I try to find balance, is that we waste a lot of time. You have abundance of time typically. I mean, some of our students are working and have family responsibilities, both as
right,
sandwiches,
like caretaker or something.
Caretakers, yeah. I mean, and so they are really starting from a very narrow stretch. But our residential students that I work with primarily are working some part-time jobs, sometimes on campus through work study, which is a great thing. You can actually study most of the time when you're working, but you have a lot of time. So what I find is a lot of movement on campus. Everyone's going somewhere. Like, where are you going? Sit down, right? Read. Well, go sit down and find a space by yourself, and just use that time. And this is again where I think I would point back to your work. How do I be an optimal learner in the spaces that I am? And if that's a classroom, I can do strategies for that. Right? Learning from lecture, I can learn from videos. I can do those things, but I have to make that time. And I have to be committed to that time. And so there's sleep patterns, there's fitness, there's all this stuff that goes along. Again, back to the balance. And how do I always say to students, I'm so busy. They say, I'm like, all right, bring up your Outlook calendar. Let me see what you got going on. Mm-hmm. What? Mm-hmm. What? Like, how do you know where you're supposed to be? Well, it's on my phone, and then I write it down, and then I say, no, you don't know where you're going. And then you're going all the time. And you're not sort of resting. One of the things, we're at a Jesuit institution, we're big on reflection. Well, we as an institution don't create the time for students to reflect. They're going Tuesday, Thursday, every other, time they have class, and they jam their schedules with Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so they can get Tuesdays off, they got Fridays off, and all this stuff. So they end up sort of wasting a lot of time, and then find that they're overwhelmed when they run out of time with the calendar saying, hey, you can't get that time back.
Right.
It's gone.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if that quite answered the question, but that was kind of what resonated with me when you asked me what that kind of third space. Yeah.
Okay, so the second question that I had from before is how student understanding of what the teacher perspective, and of maybe even how the school kind of functions and serves or doesn't serve the students, as the case may be. Like, how does ignorance of that play into the student experience? And is there, I don't know. I mean, I feel like to me, a lot of times I feel like students don't necessarily appreciate what the teacher's responsibilities are and what they're trying to do and what their incentives are, especially at the college level where teaching is not a priority. I mean, I say that.
It's
Sorry,
funny to hear that, but it's true.
Well, it's kind of like, so just to give you a story, like my dad is doing some faculty teaching at some kind of part-time teaching, or he's trying to do some part-time teaching at the school that he was at, and that he's doing online teaching. And online teaching, they make you go through modules in order to design your course and create, there's a fair amount of work to anyone who doesn't know this. There's an immense amount of work that goes into creating a new course, especially. But, when I asked him, like, well, if you're not teaching online, what happens? And I mean, I kind of knew the answer, but it's like absolutely nothing. No one trains college teachers to teach effectively.
No.
And the incentives, I mean, my understanding, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that, like, you need to not be absolutely god awful that they throw you out. Like, you need to kind of meet a very bare minimum standard of teaching quality, and then after that, like, it kind of doesn't matter, and they're more focused on, like, especially at the more research focused institutions, they're more interested in, are you bringing in grants, are you publishing papers, or I mean, in some cases it's like, hey, can we get you to join this committee or do this random thing that no one else wants to do? And so the experience from the teacher perspective is like, teaching is actually a very small part of the professor's kind of mind space.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone, but certainly that, I feel like that's a necessary corrective from this idea that, oh, the teachers are just there to help me, and they're not really necessarily there to do that.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I am very transparent in my classes about this because it's about learning, and they should understand they're a client, consumer, educator, learner, whatever, however you want to define it, but there's so much that's hidden from them. They can't even be successful because they don't know what their role is vis-a-vis the role of the faculty. And I think that's what you're getting. So let's start with that. So faculty is an umbrella term that captures about at least seven different types of faculty. And you mentioned that your dad was doing part-time. We call that per course or adjunct. Right? Those can be some of the best teachers you have because they may be in the field working in that area, and they come in at the night or on time and just give you real live experience in marketing or in the lab, etc. And that could be great, and they're doing it for very little money, no benefits, and they're just there. Or they could be, driving to 4 or 5 institutions that are all around the place trying to make a living for themselves by kind of cobbling together a lifestyle, which is really tragic in a way. PhD, professional, educated, making just couple $1,000s per course to kind of cobble. So we have to be very open about the equity issues too, as it relates to how these systems are set up. We won't get into that too much, but that's something to think about. So how would you approach that person? Well, they're driving in, trying to find parking, running in to teach their class, and then probably going home to be with their family. They're not on campus that much. They don't have to do research. They don't have to do service, but they are part-time. By all the main ways you might have a part-time job. It's not like you care about this company so much you're going to invest your life into, right? So that's known. But again, they can be great teachers. So that's one. Then you have non-tenure track faculty or lecturers or people who are just there to teach and are full-time, may do a little service, help the institution, but they don't have research responsibilities, and they're really supposed to be really focused on their teaching. But they have higher teaching loads. So that means instead of teaching 2 or 3 classes, they have 4 classes, maybe 5 classes. So they're also running around a little bit. So then, and that's a growing percentage of the faculty in most colleges and institutions. And they have the full benefits, but they don't have guaranteed contracts often, or long-term contracts. And the third group is your tenure track or tenured faculty members. And your tenure track are people who are trying to get tenure, so they have 6 years. We can go into that whole thing, but I don't want to. And there's a lot of pressure on them, and they're feeling that pressure from the moment they're hired, from 200 or 300 applicants for the one position. And they're happy to be here, but they know they can be gone in a few years if they don't produce, and that is grants and research in a variety of disciplines, from the arts to the humanities, to writing books, social scientists who do other kinds of sort of social science research, surveys, observations, etc., to our scientists, quote unquote, who are in the lab. So a lot of pressure on them. And then your tenured faculty who have gone through that gauntlet, if you will, and maybe even gotten to be a full professor. So there's another. So already I've got 6 or 7. There's research faculty. So a faculty is not a faculty is not a faculty. So as a student, I don't know that. How would I know that? I had teachers. And
they all just seem the same.
They're teachers, right? What are they should do exactly what my teachers did in high school, right? No. And if you're in a large public institution, your teacher could be a graduate student, PhD student, postdoc fellow, and your actual faculty member is someone you rarely see, or maybe does a lecture of 500 of your best friends in biology. Liberal arts, it could be with 30 people, 20 people, etc. So how do I act? How do I get the most out of that as a learner? And if you buy my logic, it still means I could make a relationship of some sort with that person to get to know why they're in this business, why did they become a professor, what was that like for them, how did they decide to do it, and we like to talk about our stuff. So if you come and ask me what my dissertation is, I'll talk to you forever. You'll be like, all right, thank you, I gotta go,
I feel like academics in general have a reputation for being a tad too verbose, like talking about themselves. Especially you ask them about their research or something, like they'll go off.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Ben. So that's one of the hidden part. And again, the more salient point that you made. My point was like all these types. Still, none of those people have ever had a course in how to teach,
right?
or how to design assessments or tests or those kind of things. They just kind of learned from either good or bad models they had or trial and error. And yet we're so confident that your work is a 93 or an 82 or a 75, but there's nothing behind that. There's no psychometrics. There's no analysis. And that's why many of them do defer to the textbook and the test bank, because those do have those psychometric properties. They might not be the best test. It might be the best understanding of how much you've learned or what you have gotten out of the course. Right. But they're more, quote unquote, accurate. They're easier to do, and they really, again, I think, limit this sort of give and take of learning, where you try something, I say, hey, I like what you're doing here. Let's try it again. Do something different, and that whatever the grade is should be based on how you've progressed over the course of a semester or a project or a paper, etc. Right. But we just don't really, again, give that time for that kind of intensive work, and so. Yeah, that's a long answer. Sorry about that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like there's just one aspect to what you're saying, which is about developing relationships with your teachers, which I think is like, I mean, I don't know what your experience with office hours is, but my understanding is, like the school, basically the school is like, you need to have office hours for your kids to come in there. So all the teachers are like, okay, we'll have office hours. You have to offer a certain number of office hours per week. And you sit in your office and literally no one comes in. And then you're basically just working through those office hours. And I feel like and I don't know if students, and I will be honest, I also did not, as a student, take advantage of office hours. I think I can remember going to like 1 or 2 persons, like office hours. And only actually, I went far more in grad school to like visit teachers, to develop more personal relationships, ask questions about the research. And I don't know, is it like, what do you think stops students? I mean, first of all, I think in general, I mean, it's good to visit teachers and ask questions and everything. But what stops students from doing that? I mean, I can kind of feel myself as like, well, I don't really have any particular question to ask, or I'm not exactly sure what to say. or like, yeah, I did okay, but not perfect on the last homework assignment or whatever. And so maybe they just don't know how to begin those conversations.
That's part of it. The other, that it's a relationship. So the other part of it is the person. Does the person seem actually open to be?
As the teacher.
Yeah, yeah. And oftentimes, sadly, they're not. I mean, they don't at least come off. I mean, academics by default are a little standoffish. They're a little less socially adept. I'm talking about myself. So
Right.
we spend a lot of time on a little thing, right? Very deep thing. It's really important to us, and we love this thing, whatever it is. Our college transition, I could talk about that all day long, but I'm really not well versed on pop culture. I am well versed in pop culture, but most people are not, and they don't have a regular demeanor, and it's generational. All those things. I mean, there's so many. And then the student comes in. They think the only time they go to somebody is when they have a problem. Now we've set this thing up. It's like, well, go see your teacher if you didn't get the good grade, or go ask why this, or go ask how many pages, or what font, and all that stuff we make you obsess about, which doesn't mean have anything to do with learning, as you know. But so there's a couple strategies again that I use. I'm just very open, and then I also really try to make presence for myself on campus. I mean, again, this is not just past COVID. I think it's a bad excuse because faculty teach a few classes, and they tend to stack them up Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday. Lock them together so they can have their office hours and research time and service time. They're kind of moving to being a hybrid employees, and they work in their homes and their offices and their coffee shops, and that's great for their research. But the students who are traditional residential students or commuter students are on this campus from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. And if we want to be open and we want to have relationships, then we have to be here at least 3 days a week is my guess, but it'd be better if we're more. And we have to be open. Like right now, my door's shut, but when I'm here, my door is open, and I'm in a really nice new building, and there's lots of students because we have good student working space. So it takes me a while to go get a cup of coffee because I get stopped, and I'm grateful for that, and it means a lot to me. It may not be a formal office hours, but it might be a student from 2 semesters ago, or someone yelling at me from across, "Hey, Schmitty," and I think I see it with their friend group. They're like, "I know my professor. He knows me." What? But shouldn't that be the norm? I think. I mean, I only have 30 students in my class, and I make an effort to get to know each of them. And then I do meet with each of them one-on-one around the third or fourth week of the semester. I schedule, this time I did on Zoom, but I try to schedule it face-to-face and make them come to my office so they know where it is. And then it's short, it's 18 minutes, because there's a lot of them that are cycling through, but I do it partially during class time because I value it, and I want to model how important it is that the other people who are not in that meeting have now time to work on their first paper that's due. Well, I value the fact that class time is being used for learning. It just is not me doing the teaching of the learning. It's us doing it at our own paces and our own time. So I think the more strategies like that faculty can take on, then hopefully there'll be reciprocal from the students. But the students do have to take some risks. And be willing to walk up to somebody on the quad or stand behind them at the Starbucks line and just say, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm in your class," and or follow them outside of class afterwards, or come early. I mean, they're there a few minutes. I'm there early, and the same group of students tend to be there early, and I'm always know them right away.
Right, chatting.
Right,
Yeah.
the ones who kind of pop in at the end and then are picking up their bags with 3 minutes to go because maybe they've done another class or whatever. Takes me a little while. So I do come and do a little public shaming on that third week and say, okay, it's my fault and it's your fault. I don't know you in the class. And why not? And so I make students sometimes sit in different spaces so they don't get too comfortable with the people they're sitting around. The goal of education is social, that we're networking, even if we're just kind of, talking a little bit before class. I do a lot of group work. I use a lot of different pedagogical stances. I value a lack of attention from everyone, not just because of social media or for adolescents and young adults. So we get up a lot, we move, we physically do the good learning strategies, and then there's always that social interaction. Then I can go in and work with the group, or I can go in and listen. I don't have to say anything, but I can just listen to what they're saying and valuing that experience. So got a little sidetracked on that one, but
Oh, no,
there's a
that's
lot
no
going on
problem.
in this little brain of mine. I've been thinking about this stuff for 25 years, and it still bothers me. Like we haven't moved at all. We haven't improved it hardly at all.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's not that hard to improve this challenge
Hmm.
about making college not just successful but valuable in the moment.
Hmm. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. You know I am.
I know.
Um,
Good company here.
um, so I have a couple of other questions. So I mean, I think we covered some of the stuff I wanted to get to. Are there any? I mean, do you see there being any particular uh, skills that students coming into college tend to lack? I mean, obviously, we're going to be speaking in generalities. I mean, in this whole video, we're speaking in generalities. But um, for instance, like one thing that I feel like, or I question is the ability to read really deeply and to kind of really to extract the implied messages of what they're reading and to kind of build off to kind of basically just to learn from reading, which I feel like I'm not quite sure why. What, I mean, I have some ideas why, but I feel like the reading ability of students is something that I feel like the better you get at it, it almost becomes this kind of superpower that you can pick up anything and you can learn a lot from it and examine it and explore it. Now, you were talking about these work study programs on campus, and when I was a college student, I was in a work study program, and before I started playing poker, which made me a lot more money than the work study program. The work study program was at the library, and I was reshelving books, which is just about, the least entertaining thing that you could do. But I picked up this book, How to Read a Book, which is a classic. I didn't know it at the time, but I was just like, that's what a weird title. You write a book about how to read a book, and then you start reading it, and you're just like, oh, no one ever told me any of these things about how to meticulously dissect arguments in a book. I don't even think I got that much out of reading it that first time. But yeah, I mean that's one skill that I think about. I mean, I'm sure there are others. I mean, you mentioned some of this kind of because students are more independent in terms of their time, finding the right balance and what they would call time management skills, is something that's important. But
no, reading, that's a good start. Reading, very few of my students read for fun, which is a problem. Because if you read for fun and you've been a reader, then that transition to reading other types of works is a little easier. If you're not a reader, there's something up in your, from your work that you have a long way to go to interpret material, to dissect material, to make those. You have to work a lot harder, and it's frustrating. It takes you a lot longer to read. So actually, I always say in the early grades, how do I work on the child who's having trouble reading? It's like, just have them read, let them read whatever they want. I don't care. Comic books and picture books, just read. And we've taken the fun and the joy out of reading, and also we've replaced how we read with, I like audiobooks as well, and I love these things, and they're very, podcasts. This is very helpful, but I still make a point to read every day. I try to write every day, and I try to read every day. I don't always do it, but that's something that's part of being a learned person, I think. Those are two important skills. And I reflect every day. I think a lot. I walk and I think. So there's certain things that I do. I haven't been in a class. I'm a terrible student these days, but when I was a student, I wish I would have known these things. I always thought I was just getting the information from being there in the class and soaking in, I was a history major, so I would have reams and reams of notes, and I had these really good learning strategies to kind of dissect them and, make them sense of them and reproduce them and kind of create stories in my mind about what the questions are going to be like. I got to be pretty good. It took me a while after a solid 2.7 in my first year. And I did better when I liked it. When I started liking the content and the professors, I did a lot better. I was willing to work harder for people that I could tell cared a little bit about me and a lot about what they were doing. They were passionate about it. They demonstrated how to do that. So that's the other thing that's lacking, this appreciation or understanding about how do you get excited about something. And how do you really start to lean into something? Like maybe you have an idea for a business that you have. Well, you're not going to have classes that'll help you do that in college, generally, some of the entrepreneurship programs. But spend time talking through that with people on campus. Really get into that. You started getting into maybe health and wellness and fitness and stuff like that. Learn about why that is good for you and what you're getting out of it, do you have classes in those areas that you could take as electives that would help you fuel a little bit of that, connecting what your quote unquote real life experiences are currently and in the future to what you're kind of into. You're going to take classes and be in experiences that you don't have that interest in, and you still have to do well. So you have to be resilient. So being resilient is a skill that's lacking. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, like, there's a sense in which, I think this is correct about mosquitoes, where, mosquitoes don't have enough power to kind of move on their own. So they're kind of, you can get rid of mosquitoes by just like having a fan, blowing around you, right? Like the mosquitoes, they're just blown by the fan. And I feel like there are also students, and I count myself, certainly as one of them when I was younger for sure, where, you are kind of letting your environment determine
yes
what you're interested in and what you end up doing, because you haven't actually, you have a bad teacher in a subject that you thought you were interested in. Well, now you're not interested in it anymore.
Don't give up that ownership, right? Don't give up that ownership of your learning. That's a great statement right there. I mean, you said it. Don't be the mosquito.
Don't be the mosquito. Yeah. I think it does take some time to realize and practice that the strategies that would get you out of there, sometimes if I get bogged down in something, that I'm reading about some kind of complex topic, it's like, okay, look, first of all, you have to recognize, like, I'm getting bogged down. Like it's kind of fuzzy in my head now. So it's like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I just want to focus on one little bit of it, one little piece that seems interesting, and that's one strategy, but I think that, I'm not sure, if the students have the recognition and ability that, like, it's not like anyone has complete control over, how motivated or how excited we are about something, but in spite of your environmental constraints, there are still things that you can exert some kind of control over, or kind of decide to move in a different direction, and this kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of students will take what we would call our core, or your general education courses here, and immediately dismiss their value and set themselves up for a C or a C plus, and it's all effort. They willed themselves away from trying because they've determined it's not valuable to them. So I don't have a lot of sorrow for that situation, but I have empathy for it, because I can see how that can happen, because no one's explaining to them why this well-rounded liberal arts education will benefit them in the future, why taking philosophy and we have religious studies, not a religion but religious studies, why those things are helpful in the current context in addition to historical context, or why you have to take a writing class or math, equivalent of math. We have 4 semesters of foreign language, which one might argue is a lot, given the multiple methods and ways of learning those languages nowadays. And so I'm up to alternatives to that. But There is something to be said about sticking to a strategy that you were in, like you're in the class and you're going to stay with it. Now you are in control. I still can go to the office hours. I can still get a tutor. There's lots of resources around here that go underutilized. I always say it's 80-20. 20% of the students eat up 80% of the resources around. And then you just have that messy middle of people who, and then it's somewhat, I have to say this, and some of my early research is a lot of men don't ask for help academically in other places as well, and they suffer until they gotten over their head, and then they're withdrawing, and they're asking for a grievance or something like that to get out of a class or out of a bad grade. And I said, well, did you go? I said, go to tutoring, or you have this service that's available from one of my advisees who's in the sciences. And he said, well, I didn't kind of like when the first time I went there, I didn't get, I said, you got to go back. First time you come to office hours, the professor's not there, try again. Mm-hmm. So that's it. Well, the other thing that it's not related necessarily, but that's lacking is this hyper focus on grades and outcomes. We have many students coming in who are at the top of their classes and doing really quite well with some modest level of effort, I'm assuming, in these high schools these days with grade inflation, and not a lot of these study skills or these learning skills that they're trying to get now, either in college. And we don't teach it. We don't teach you how to learn in college. We don't. So you have to go to your channel or other places to figure that out, or kind of learn the slow, hard way. But this over-obsession with grades is really hurting a lot of people and really hurting their unnecessary, I call it unnecessary stress. And they're focused on the wrong things. They are focused on how many pages and, when is this thing due and all those things, and worrying about those things at the expense of their brain working on the actual problems that they're supposed to be working on, or making incremental progress over the course of 2 days, turning in a draft. Jackie sent me her paper that was due on yesterday, on last Friday. I turned it around in 24 hours. I say, this is certainly well on its way. Change this, do this, extend this. She had it turned in early, crushed, right? 27 other people didn't take advantage of that opportunity. Even though I told them, I'm happy to look at something. Right. I'll turn it around. Right. 24 hours, guaranteed. It was a Saturday. She gave it to me on Friday. I turned it around on Saturday. Now I don't have a life, so I have nothing to do. Right. But even if I did, right. I make that commitment. Yeah. And it's stunning to me that they won't, And she's a senior, and she's learned not to care so much about her grade, but she really liked this topic. Because I let her pick the topic. It's a psych. Pick anything you want. Yeah. Go study. Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I mean, also it's kind of, it's interesting, to think about like where does the value lie from the student's perspective. And as you're saying, it's like when you think that the value really lies in the grade that you're getting, and you're trying to kind of like minimize, I mean, I was great at this doing as a student, minimize effort, maximize gains, whereas like the option that you gave the students in this case, and there are, my dad was telling me about a situation where there was a student who was a freshman who came in the first like 4 weeks of fall semester, and she wanted to plan out spring semester. And I think he said that like happened one time in 17 years or something, or however many years it was, that it's like the planning ahead part is not something that happens. And in your case, it's like, this is free money. This is like, because any interaction that you get with the teacher, I mean, even if a teacher is a jerk, like they still know something.
They do.
And it's kind of like you and dealing with people who maybe you might not get along with in real life or whatever, but you still want to try to learn from them. And so it's like, if I can get extra time, and forget about the grade, just I get extra feedback from you on my paper. Okay, well then that's like chef's kiss. That's something you really, really want to do. But yeah, okay. Maybe we've hit on that drum enough. I don't know. We'll see what the some of the students chime in, and
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what some of the comments are on
uh,
these. I think they'll resonate, and I think some will be. Well, that doesn't happen at my college. And like hopefully that's the case where some people are like, wow, vast majority of my professors show up A game all day. They're
right,
available when I meet them. I just haven't seen it in 25 years, so I'd love to
right,
talk to that person because
right,
that's the expectation. That is not the norm.
yeah,
And when I ask my students to think back high school and college, how many of their professors were outstanding?
mm,
They immediately start like thinking, oh, like this, 5 minutes. I said, no, 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 no.
like outstanding.
Outstanding. One of my favorite words, outstanding. Like that's a small group right there,
Mm,
right? And on anything, and it starts to get harder to name the outstanding one. There's a lot of good ones. They're good. They're fine. They did their job. But this is a lot of money, and you are rightfully deserving of a lot more from than just good. And that's good in the classroom because these other parts are this outside of the classroom, this extra stuff that we were just describing that you're also available to you.
mm,
You have to ask for it and you have to follow up on it. And the ones who do, I think, find they have a much better experience than the ones who are just really just passively kind of going through. And I think a fair number, I would put it at almost 60% of students are really passively going through their education in a similar type of institution. I don't want to like call out my own institution as being like bad or good, but that's my feeling. I could be wrong on that, and I don't have the hard data, but
mm,
I haven't heard a whole lot of people come and say, "Geez, to a person, these students are just eating up all the resources and asking for all this stuff and going on service learning trips and going abroad to actually learn something rather than to go and see the world, which is cool. But anyway, so there's a litany of things that I would think would be more likely than the less likely here, I guess. Yeah.
So let me change tacks a little bit and talk about like um, we've had conversations on our own about how academia is changing in the future, and I mean this is probably even another layer to uh, maybe what students don't necessarily recognize might be happening in terms of changes to higher education generally, and I don't know. I mean, are there changes to the college experience or maybe even how colleges are run and managed that you see affecting student education kind
Yeah.
of, over the next few years? Um, I
Yes.
mean, we don't have to go deep into it, but I mean,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, the easy, not easy, the challenging one that is easily seen is the reduction of the tenured and tenure track faculty ranks and the growth of the non-tenure track in the ways of full-time as well as part-time. This has always been around. It's just that equation is continues to shift. That is partly due to the increase of online instruction. I would say most online instruction is average, and there's not a whole lot of instruction for how do you be a good learner online, and so therefore it just it's kind of a hit and miss for the learner side. So there's not a lot. Just like your dad has to go through all that training, the students go through maybe a minuscule module of online learning, if any at all. And they're just the recipient of the syllabus and the discussion forums and how do you do this and that. But it's not about the framework of how do I learn in this medium, and it is somewhat different. It's not a whole lot different than a pure lecture hall, but it's still different, right? And it's got a different flavor to it. So I think that's a big shift that's coming, and I think if you can be successful in learning in an online space, obviously that's going to benefit you because that's where much of your learning after college is going to be taking place, right? So there's graduate programs are mostly online. There's kind of LinkedIn Learning, all that stuff, all those opportunities. Online learning is going to dominate, I think, the learning spaces. The second is we're not doing much with teaching students how to effectively use AI. And AI is going to bring a lot of changes. My prediction is going to bring result in a reduction of faculty teaching in the introductory levels in both residential campuses as well as large online campuses or for-profit college. Every area is going to be affected because this interpersonalized learning domains may be better learning spaces for certain subjects, for certain individuals. And so I'd like to see how this plays out. So I mean that by saying you're not going to replace colleges and universities with AI. That's simplistic in this short term. But in the short term, the resources available to students are going to be greater. And we need to work with them to how do they responsibly use that, and how do we as faculty understand that since they're going to be probably ahead of us, well ahead of us, some of us, me included, of using it. And so it's not a cat and mouse game where we're not sure who's doing what and why. I allow students to use it in my classes. I ask them to cite paragraphs and parts of it where they use it, just so I'm aware of what's happening. Maybe I can learn from it as well. I was interviewed by a woman from University of Maryland, and I don't know if the article's out, because she heard, from somebody at this campus that I was one of the fewer faculties early on, this was even last year, who was allowing students to use AI.
And I mean, I assume you're talking about like using like LLMs, Chat GPT, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
To generate stuff that they're writing, or
generate stuff they're writing, to polish stuff that they've already written, to ask questions, or just put in survey items maybe that they've generated, and see if they can be better worded or not double-barreled, a term that most people don't know. And their work is better. Mm-hmm. And the question I always have is, well, is it quicker and better? Did you learn anything about why it's better? And just keep asking them. I know it's okay if it's quicker and it's better, but I still want you to learn from it and not become reliant upon it. So then you cut off a part of your curiosity or part of your thinking that will hurt you down the road. And just as these things have hurt our students and everybody in various ways in terms of wasting time and not allowing us to ask better questions of the tools, that's only going to get more challenging for our students who are coming up as natives who've always had this. So I worry about that, and I think higher education is naively assuming that this model that we have is going to outlast this other model. I think they're going to be unpleasantly surprised in a shorter amount of time that there is some replacement and redundancies that are going to come quickly to our business processes for sure, but even in the teaching realm, the research realm, all these other places, we're going to have to be mindful of how we respond to it.
Do you have any advice for like a student who was doing like 100% online education? I think that will. I mean, there are already, I think, plenty of students doing that, and I think there may be more students in the future. And I know, we both probably have our reservations about what that experience misses from a kind of interpersonal experience where you're building closer relationships, seeing people face to face, meeting people, at cafes and hallways and the kind of thing that you were talking about before. But yeah, do you have any advice for students who are kind of, either thinking about or already engaged in a kind of 100%?
Yeah, there's some similarities because which may be exacerbated by online, but there's still student services and student resource services available to online. They have to have it. We have to put it in our delivery models to get approval by the Maryland Higher Education Commission, right? So you have to have Career Center, you have to have mental health services, you have to have financial aid, you have to have all the stuff. Now it's even more incumbent upon the individual student to be an advocate for themselves. So that's one thing. Just really, really front load that. 2, go and ask for one-on-one meetings with your professors, all of them, early in the semester. Go to those virtual office hours. Do make a point to network a little bit with students who are in the discussion forums or any other interactive spaces if they create group projects, et cetera. Don't shirk those because you're already losing some of those natural kind of interactions. So you have to almost kind of go a little bit overboard. Also, it might be valuable, again, especially if you're already working or you already have some networks, to make sure you're applying a lot of those sort of softer social skills, taking advantage of any time to give a presentation in your workplace, or to, kind of show something that you're doing that's unique or different, to kind of supplement what's really just a missing element, for being on more of a face-to-face type of campus or experience. But again, like I say, a lot of our commuter students and even a lot of people who are very passive, they're not getting much either from that face-to-face medium, because they're not doing that. I think just for the online, you just have to, be aware that you're missing that piece. So you have to be extra vigilant about taking advantage of those resources.
Gotcha. All right, I have my last question. Just any other like catch-all, any other advice, any area that we haven't touched on that you feel like, hey, if I could say one or two things to like college students today, or early college students, like,
Yeah.
What would it be?
Well, I would just say, don't take yourself or this too seriously. This is just one little part of what hopefully is a long and enriching and enjoyable life experience, And so don't put too much stress on yourself. Don't overthink, am I doing enough or doing the right thing? Put together a plan. Put together a plan every semester that it breaks down from every month, for every week. I mean, the cadence of the academic calendar is odd. It's the least amount of days anyone works or anybody goes to school. It's bizarre. Every other day there's a break or this or that or this. We're getting ready for finals. We can't have class. Oh, we can't do this. It's an odd environment. It's not normal. So you have to remember that. It's not like a 9-to-5 job, but you want to try to make it your own 9-to-5 job, however you define that. And I don't want to, tell you to go to bed early and all that stuff. No, plan your sort of life, your college experience life, in the context of your life, right? It's one part. It's not defining who you are. It will never define. Your major doesn't define who you are. Your career won't define you. Become very comfortable with sort of who you're becoming as you learn. When you learn, you change. That's the whole definition of learning. That's the whole point. So you have to be able to see how you're changing intellectually, socially, personally, and really become comfortable with those changes and really set aside. I said this to my students last week. We were talking about something, and I said, well, who's the most important relationship in your life? And I could see their wheels going. I could see, auntie and grandma. I said, it's you. Your relationship with yourself. And this is the very unique time and space. If you're in a residential or 18 to 21-year-old, you're becoming who you are for a while. You'll still change a couple more times, don't worry. But this is it. You're starting, this is down the road you're on. So take time, become comfortable with silence, be comfortable being by yourself, and as well as with other people, of course. But just kind of, really, really soak it in. So that's I guess, sort of a take-home a message for people. Don't take it too seriously, but really look inward for yourself, not for the grade, not for the graduate school application, not for what's ahead. Be here now. Is do as much as you can while you're here about, kind of who you are. And the other thing the institution's not doing, and I'll kind of cut it off here. I saw a good talk with Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how come we don't teach people how to be a good friend. I think that's a pretty good skill to learn as a young person, as an adolescent, as a young adult. Being a good friend it's hard. It's not come natural. I think the friends that you have, the friends that you've had, you can learn from those. Those are very important relationships. So. These are the kind of things that are not in the curriculum that you can get to if you, as a faculty or as a student group or in a club, that you'll have these experiences where you're around a lot of like sort of minded people and doing some things. But how do I experience that? How do I learn from these new people or these diverse people that I didn't know or I haven't worked with, or I'm on this club team or in student government? I mean, what a wonderful, joyful experience. I'm so jealous that I'm so old. Wish I could do it again. I did pretty good, but I could do a lot better knowing what I know now. And I think that's the thing that, Ben, you and I were trying to do with these kind of forums and this kind of is try to just let's not make it so hard on each other. I mean, we know so much about this stuff, and the colleges know. Why are they not telling us? Why would they make us sort of figure it out on our own, or guess, or suffer? I think the things that we've talked a lot about a lot, but if we boil down, let's say 23 of the 70 things, those are good. I mean, if you did some of those, I think you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm totally with you. I think there's a huge value in becoming, thinking about the community and everything like that. And yeah, as you said, yeah, just even if you just do a couple things that we talked about, that like it can make a difference. It can make a difference for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
We'll be talking again soon. And if you have any questions for Josh, you can write them down in the comments below, and I'll pass them along to him, and we can do some reply back and forth, or maybe we'll have a follow-up video or something like that.
Oh, that'd be great. That sounds awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Take it easy.
See you.